So welcome to the next in the series. This one's got quite a long title. So first of all, welcome. We'll kick things off with our new little presentation piece there. This one is about safe and efficient load handling. We're going to go into ergonomics and economics. I'll just run through the things we're going to hit in the presentation today. So ergonomics and economics. We're going to look at types of transport load, types of load, ergonomic case studies and comparisons, the ergonomics, manual handling and safety, use of materials handling equipment, normally conveyors, what materials handling equipment can bring you. So we're going to run through a case study. It's not a real case study. It's a kind of made up one just to give you an idea of how the calculations work. So let's look at our first one. We'll look at pallet loading. Now, recognize that sometimes you have to load on pallets. You get very odd shaped equipment, including ours, if we're shipping out conveyors. But sometimes pallets are loaded with boxes, bags, or easily stackable equipment. Now, the problem with pallet loading is all of the space that isn't product. This is, that's all the space that's pallet, space under a pallet, around a pallet, above the pallet. So that can really add up. There's a lot of air that you're shipping around using diesel, using road tax. So it doesn't feel very efficient. Admittedly, you can load the truck quite quickly from pallets with forklifts, and there are specific materials handling equipment to do it even faster. But the biggest part of transport isn't loading and unloading. The biggest part of transport is the journey itself, which can take days sometimes. So that's where the money is. So let's take a look at loose loading. So normally, we would say something can be loose loaded if it's stackable. So you have to be able to manually stack it, typically less than 20 kilos, can be stacked or piled in a stable way. And we normally see parcels, boxes. We have seen barrels, like oil barrels. Tires is a pretty common one. Here's some examples. Cartons, clearly you can stack those, especially if they're all the same size. Bags, you can stack fairly stably as long as the container they're in is stable. Tires, what you can see there, quite interestingly, they found the most efficient way of stacking tires, and that's called lacing, where you put the outside of one circle on the inside of another, and that fills the void. So you're shipping less, again, shipping less air. So people are even loose loading. They're finding ways to fill in the space that isn't product. So if we're looking at efficient transportation, let's make some assumptions just for our case study. We have this imaginary carton box. It's a 400 wide, 400 long, 600 high. It's a cardboard box. We're loading onto Euro pallets normally. Each Euro pallet can hold 18 cartons. We're loading into a 45-foot long trailer. That can take 32 pallets. The company's working 254 days a year, so we are having some days off, holidays, weekends. And this imaginary company is shipping around 1 million cartons a year of whatever product it is. The company is mostly shipping goods from the UK to somewhere in Central Europe, let's say Lyon in France or Munich, as a typical journey time. And the average cost per load is about 1,800 euros if you're going to hire someone to take that load. So that's our basis, that's our starting point. Now we get into some calculations. We have 18 cartons times 32 pallets. That's 576 cartons per load for pallet loading. If we're doing 1 million cartons a year, That's 1,736 loads per year. That's a lot of trucks. If we compare that to loose loading, we have our internal trailer dimensions. We can figure out how many boxes we can get into that trailer. And if you've got mixed loads, there are pieces of software out there that can give you a good idea how to stack the most efficient way. But in this case, let's say it's the same box. So we can get 923 cartons in a truck compared to the 576. Million cartons a year. So that's down to 1,084 loads per year. So you can see that's quite a considerable reduction. And considering the 1,800 euros per truck, you've got 600 and something trucks saved, 652. So the change from pallet load to loose load for this imaginary company is 1.1 million euros per year. Now, you can recognize that's quite a significant saving. I've had this conversation with several companies over the year, and they've done their own calculations and said, okay, it's a no-brainer. The payback period is incredibly short. Obviously, you have to make that change. You have to be able to loose load at each end. But the savings are significant. And we have to consider the green aspects. Let's take some diesel trucks off the road, don't clog up the roadway, don't pollute the environment. But yeah, 652 trucks off the road, that's a good step in the right direction, I think. Now, if we look at manual handling relating to loose loading, we've got some pictures from customers here. So you can see here, they're lifting from overhead. There's got a high risk of back injury because he's leaning backwards. And there's potential impact from a falling load. If that box comes down on top of him, that can result in injury. Depends on the weight of the box, obviously, but that looks like quite a large box. If that's full of clothing or something of that nature, that's probably 20 kilos. If that lands on you from overhead, that's a potential risk. The second one, you can see the guy standing on the box. So if that's a box full of electrical goods or something that you can damage, that's not a good thing. It's possibly unstable, so if the box collapses, that guy's going to fall. So the risk of just falling off that box is also significant. There's no handrail around there. He doesn't really know where the edge is because he's carrying something quite large. So after those guys pick all those boxes down to a pallet, a truck has to come in there into that narrow space. And you have the potential of being crushed by them in a narrow space where you can't escape it. And the risk of a crush injury from a forklift truck or a HIF truck or something of that nature, that's a significant risk. And it's slow. Typically, we've seen over the years 3 or 4 hours to unload it using this method. You end up handling mixed SKUs is difficult. For anyone that may not know what a SKU is, it's a stock control unit. So if you've got a mixture of jeans and t-shirts and you want to put those in different places, or you've got electrical goods, you've got vacuum cleaners and microwave ovens, you want to palletize those in different places. So you've got 2 pallets running inside that truck at the same time. That gets very, very slow. But yeah, like I say, it's typically 3 or 4 hours to unload. But we can shorten that. So we would recommend, obviously, because we're manufacturers, and we would recommend the use of telescopic conveyors, at least for this case study. So for those who don't know what telescopic conveyors are, we have this fixed base, and all of those telescopic parts will retract into that fixed base, and it's fixed to your dock. And then you have these multiple moving stages that extend out into the truck. They don't touch the floor, so it's cantilevered. Doesn't matter about the level of the truck. But that's the basics of a telescopic conveyor. There are some additional options. It's definitely our our preferred solution, and it seems to be our customer's preferred solution. So what we have here is a hydraulic tilt and a man rider, or we call it operator platform these days. What you have here is the pivot pin at the back. We have a hydraulic rams at the front to lift the front of the machine up and down. We have the operator platform, and that gives us some height adjustment. So we can go into the truck, lift the person up, and now they can safely take things down from the truck. You've got a continuous pick and place position, which makes the ergonomics much better and faster. And yeah, all those things about climbing and lifting, all of that goes away. And also, this is much faster. You can position pallets around here for handling mixed SKUs. So if you can imagine some pallets around the edge. You can also add conveyors on the back if you want a longer pick and place area. Typically, you'd have 1 or 2 people on the platform and then a few people around the back who are picking boxes off and palletizing. Maybe 1 or 2 people on forklift trucks taking those pallets away when they're full. What we have here is a really nice video we've got from one of our reseller partners. This is a little case study. And honestly, this talks for itself. I love this video. So you can see here there are 2 guys on the platform. They're working quite nicely at height, right at the roof of the truck. They've got a nice pick in place. They're unloading very fast. Palletizing, and 1 person taking those pallets away while the other guys are loading up the next one. So now we have a timer. This is the bit that really sells itself, but remember we were talking about 3 to 4 hours if you're palletizing inside the truck. So we had 1 emptied in 19 minutes. The other one fully emptied in 23 minutes. So the speed that you can unload a shipping container is much, much faster with this setup. So let's look at the case study. If we look at no materials handling equipment at all. So just like we saw in the pictures, you got 2 guys picking boxes up, put them on pallets, 1 forklift driver. Unloading and palletizing takes approximately 4 hours. Capital investment is 0 because you've already got people and equipment. You don't need to buy anything. The loads per year we already know because we've switched from pallet loading to loose loading. We know how many loads a year we need. We look at roughly 12 man hours per load. So that gives us 13,000 man hours per year for these 3 guys, just unloading trucks. Now, we can step into the realms of telescopic conveyors. Now, it seems at first glance, well, I've got a lot more people working on this. But when you consider the less amount of time that you're working on that, then it really comes into its own. We have a capital investment, let's say 1 boom with all the extras on it. Let's say 50,000 euros, something of that nature. We have the same number of loads per year because that's the calculation we did earlier. We have 3.5 man hours per load instead of 12. So the total per year is less than 4,000 man hours for a 50 grand investment. That feels good already. So let's carry on with the calculation. So we have a saving of 9,000 man hours, assuming something in the region of 20 euros an hour cost to the company. So 20 euros an hour times the 9,000 hours, that's 184,000, or it's 3,500 a week. So we know how much the capital investment is, and we know the saving per week. Now we can calculate how many weeks payback time is. It's just offsetting the saving for the investment. So we get 14.1 weeks. That is a very, very short payback time. We were talking about a conveyor system earlier this week, where the customer was saying their boundary is around 24 months. If it's less than 2 years, it's a good plan. And the conveyor system we were looking at was around 18 months. When we look at efficient loose loading, this equipment is much, much shorter. We know from other studies that have been done from customers, typical payback period is around 3 months for a telescopic boom, if you're having a significant amount of loads. So I hope that was interesting. It was just a little walk through some sums and a very stark look at the difference between pallet loading, loose loading, the difference between loading by hand and loading using a conveyor. Hope that was interesting. If anyone has any requirements to look into this further, we're happy to do the same thing, but rather than a fictitious company just to show the sums, we can do it for your company. So please get in touch. We can pay you a site visit. We can do an analysis of what you're doing, gather the data that we need, and then present a case study and see if it's sufficient or not, see if it works for you. So feel free to get in touch. You can give us a phone call, send a mail to our sales or just visit us on any of the social media platforms. We can take a message from anybody. So, questions. Let me have a see. Oh, I've got a couple of questions here. So, what's the expected throughput increase from loose loading? Yeah, it really comes down to loading time. So the savings between pallet loading and loose loading is the amount of fill you get in the truck. It's not necessarily faster. Loading pallets onto a truck can be done quite quickly. I have to admit that. But it's still maybe half an hour, which is about the same time as we're loose loading with a telescopic boom. What percentage reduction of injuries could we see? Now, I really should have done some further research and got the latest details from our health and safety executive. We know that the largest cause of injury, year in, year out, every year, is slips, trips, and falls. The second largest cause of injury is manual handling. The amount of money that our gross output for the whole country, and all countries for that matter, the amount of output that we lose because of bad backs is significant. Back injuries are a real drain on the economy. So if we can reduce that in any way, help people have a nicer life, don't be often in pain, unload your trucks faster, happier workforce, it all seems like it's a win-win-win-win. And that's how I can see it. I got only 2 questions today, so that's quite interesting. Must have answered all the questions in the presentation there. So it's a fairly short one today. I hope it was interesting. If you want a copy of this presentation as a demonstration of how to do these things, just get in touch. We're happy to share. So thank you for your time, and hope to see you on the next one. We'll eagerly wait and see what the next one in the series is. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks very much.